Hi everyone, welcome to Java lesson 05, and this is Tashuanchu, and I'm with my friend Ukintile. Today we are going to learn on Java instance blocks and static blocks. Now in the previous lessons we have learned about constructor, method, and variables. Now, Java is a object-oriented class-based programming language, and inside the class, there are five elements. The number one is variables, methods, constructors, instance block, and the static block. Now, in the previous lessons, we have covered variable, method, and a constructor. Now, today we are going to look at the instance block and static block, the last two elements of the class. Okay. Now, before getting started with these instance blocks, let's just recap on the constructor because uh, we have to understand constructors when we are looking at these instance blocks. Okay. Now, in the last lesson, I've told you that constructors are nothing but is a set of statements that is executed during the object creation. And there are two types of constructor, that is default constructor and the user-defined constructors. Now, there is two purpose. Number one is to write logic, and those logics are executed during the object creation. And the second purpose is most programmers use this constructor mainly for initialization of the instance variables during the object creation. So those are the points that you have to remember when it comes to constructor. Now, when it comes to instance blocks, what are instance blocks? Now, instance blocks are nothing but is the element of the class which serves the same two purpose as served by the constructor. These instance blocks purpose is same as that of constructor, but what's the difference between this instance and the constructor? And why there is a concept of this instance block? I'm going to tell you this. Now, the difference number one is when it comes to syntax of declaring of those constructor and the instance block. Now, constructor, how we declare constructor, the syntax is if we have a class test, then we declare constructor as like if we show it here. If I show it here, let's say, so constructor, if we have a class test, then we use to declare constructor as test, then so, and we write logics here. Now, when it comes to instance block, the syntax is just open brace and close brace, and you can write the logics here. So this is the difference number one. So I hope you have understood this definition. The instance block is an element of the class which serves the same two purposes as served by the constructor. Now the syntax of the instance block is just open brace and a close brace, and you can write the logics here. Okay. So now before moving on with this purpose of the instance block, let me just uh, finish up with this difference. The difference number one is with the syntax of how they are declaring, and the number two is uh, this instance block and the constructor has the same purpose, but which one will be executed first in the program? So we want to check this with the practical. So which one will be getting executed first? Okay. Let's say uh, we have class test, and inside the class, let's say we have one constructor, declare one constructor, and let's write the logic here. Simple logic. It is just printing something here. Let's print 0 or 0 This is our constructor, and now this is the constructor. Now let's declare one instance block. So this is how we declare instance block. So this is the instance block, and let's try to print something here. So this is the instance block. Now let's try to declare the main method. Now let's try to create one object so that we execute this constructor and the instance block. So how we create object is new test. This is the nameless object. So let's try to save this, and so this is to show whether instance block will execute false or the constructor will execute false in a program. Okay. Let's say we have so let's try to compile. So compile successfully. Let's try to execute this Java test. Now, if you look at this output, we can see that instance block is executing first. Okay. Now, the point you have to remember is this constructor and the instance block has the same purpose, but the difference is with the syntax and the priority of the execution. So always at the time of object creation, this constructor in the instance block will be executed. So, but which one will be executed first, the constructor or the instance block, is that the instance block will be executing first. Now, why there is a need of this instance block? So it has the same purpose, but why the concept of the instance block is there in Java? This is because uh, for every object creation, the instance block will be executed, whereas the execution of the constructor depends on the specific object creation. So how it is, I'm going to show it. So for every object creation, the instance block will be executed, whereas execution of the constructor depends upon the specific object creation. Okay. Now, let's say we are creating 10 objects in a Java file, and 10 times this instance block will be executed, whereas so execution of the constructor depends upon the specific object. So how it is, I'm going to show it here. So let's say we have a class test, then I mean we have a constructor test here. Now let's try to declare another constructor tst test. So let's say we have one parameter for this constructor, int a. Let's try to print something here. This is a one argumented constructor, and let's say we have another constructor, int a and int p, and this is the two argumented constructor. And let's say we have one instance block here, and let's try to create object for this. So this object new testy is for this constructor. Now let's create another object for this execution of the second constructor, one argumented constructor. Let's say new test, and let's pass, because we have to pass the value if we are declaring parameter. So let's say we have 10. So to execute this constructor, let's declare another object, new. So these are the nameless objects. I've already told you in the last class how to declare how to create the nameless object. Let's say we have here there's two parameters. Let's say we can give two values here, 10 and 20. Now this is just to check why we need this instance block. Now, as I have told you that for every object creation, the instance block will be executed, whereas the constructor depends upon the specific object. So let's see the output of this and let's understand how uh, instance block is executed for every object creation. Let's try to save this and let's try to execute here. So always we have to compile first. Compile successfully. Let's try to execute. So here you can see that for every object creation, this instance block is executed. The 3 times the instance block has been executed. You can see here the instance block, instance block, instance block. If I show here, so at the time of this object creation, first this instance block will be executed, and then this constructor will be executed. And at the time of this object creation, the one argumented constructor, at this time, first this will be executed, only then this will be executed, the one argumented constructor. And at the time of executing this object, creating this object, so first instance block will be executed and then this constructor will be executed. So what I'm trying to say here is that for every object creation, so there are 3 objects. So for every object creation, this instance block will be executed, whereas this constructor execution depends upon the specific object. For example, for this object, only this constructor is being executed. For this object, this one argumented constructor is being executed, and for this object, the 2 argumented constructor is being executed. So this is the main difference between the constructor and the instance block, the syntax and the execution priority. And why there is a concept of the instance block is because for every object creation, the instance block will be executed, whereas for constructor, specific object will be specific constructor will be executed on the constructor. So that's the main difference between the constructor and the instance block. Now let me now move in with the purpose of the instance block. Now the purpose is also same as the constructor, that is to write the business logic at object creation. And there are 2 purposes for this instance, to write the logic of the logic at the object creation, and the second one is the initialization of the instance variables during the object creation. But which one will be executing first, the constructor or the instance block? Is the instance block will be executed first. Okay, example instance block. Now let me show you some example on the purpose of the instance block. This is to write the logics of the logics at the object creation. Now example, let's create one file. Now example, 2 examples we have already covered here. Now the example number 3. Let's look at the example number 3. Example 3 is inside the class, it is possible to declare multiple constructor in the instance block. Multiple instance and constructor inside the how it is, let me show it here. So just let's modify this code. So inside the class, we can declare multiple constructor. Here there are 3 constructor, and we have 1 instance block here. Let me declare another instance block to show this, to solve this example 3. Let's try. This is how we declare instance block. Okay, and now let's try to print something. Let's consider this as a logic of our program. So this is the instance block 2, and this is the instance block 1. So let's try to execute this. Compiled successfully. Now let's try to execute. So this example is just to show that inside the class, multiple instance block and the constructor can be declared. Okay, so this is the example 3, and now let's look at example 4. Example 4 is instance blocks are used to so this example is based on the first purpose, that is writing the logics of the application. Okay, now let's try to look at the example for the second purpose, that is instance blocks using for initialization of the instance variables during the object creation. Okay, purpose. Initialization of object creation. Now, example 1 for this is, so let's try to program with the instance block without using the instance block. So let's try to let's try to do it here. Let's try to just remove this. Let's see, we have the class let's say we have a class emp, and let's say we have one instance variable, that is int eid, and let's say we have one method tsp display method, and inside this display method let's try to print something. Let's try to print eid, and let's try to call our method here. So always we have to do with object creation. So this is how we call the method without a method with a nameless object. Okay, this is not test, this is emp class. Save this, and let's try to compile and execute. I made mistake here. It should be this without compile successfully. Now let's try to execute. I think we have made mistake. We have class emp, so we have to use emp. Sorry. So we have saved the file as test. First we have to compile with the file name, and then when you execute we have to give the class name. So here now here we have write one program, simple program here without using the instance block, and what we have seen is with this default value is being printed. Default value is being printed. So to overcome this problem, let's try to use instance block for initialization of the instance variables. Let's try to just let's say this is our example one without using the instance block, and let's try to keep it here. Now the example two is instance. Let's solve this problem with using the instance block. Okay, now let's try to declare one instance block here. So this is how we declare instance block. Let's just try to uh, initialize this eid equal to, let's say, 2, let's say 1 2 3. So this is how we initialize the variable. Okay, so we have here instance variable eid. So what the second purpose of the instance variable says is to initialize the instance variable during object creation. At the time of this object creation, so here this is how we are creating object. At the time of this object creation, so this eid, so this instance variable will be assigned to 1 2 3, and then when we call this method, so this 1 2 3 should be printed. So let's see the output. So this is how we are using instance block for initialization of the instance variable during the object creation. We have a test.java file. Let's try to compile. So compile successfully. So we have a class emp. So this is how we serve the purpose by using the instance variable for initialization of the instance variables during the object creation. Now I think that's all with the instance block. We have seen the two purpose, that is to write the business logic at object creation, and the purpose number two is instance block is used to initialize some values to the instance variables during the object creation. The purpose is same as that of the constructor, but there is the difference is regarding the syntax and the priority of the execution, and the third difference is for every object creation, the instance block will be executed, whereas the constructor execution depends upon the specific object. Okay, so that's all with the instance block. And now let me start with the second block, that is static block, the fifth element of the class. So this is the final element of the class. So now what is static block? Now static blocks are different from this instance block. So it's completely different from instance block. The definition, it says that the static block is a set of instructions that is run only once when a class is loaded into the memory. Now what it is trying to say is the static blocks are those blocks which is executed at the time of .class file loading. So when you hear the word, as I've told you earlier, that when you hear the word static, always think of that it is linked with a class, and this will be executed during the .class file loading. Now to understand this, we have to understand the execution process, the two process in the execution. The execution is done by the JVM, that is Java Virtual Machine. Now the two purpose of this JVM is at the time of execution, the two purpose. The purpose number one is to load the .class file into the memory, and to call the main method. So what when this static block will be executing is at the time of dot class file loading by the JVM, this static block will be executed. So this is the definition of the static block. And now this is the syntax. Similar to that of the instance, just you have to put a static modifier in front of these braces. Okay. So this is the syntax of the static block, and you can write the logics here, and this logic will be executed during the dot class file loading. So this static is always linked with a class. Just remember that. And now the purpose of the static block. And the purpose of the static block is also similar to that of instance block. It is used for writing the logics of the application, and the difference is that those logics of the static block will be executed during the dot class file loading, whereas the instance block logics will be executed during the object creation. Just object creation and dot class file loading. You have to remember dot class file loading and the object creation. Instance block at the time of object creation, and the static block at the time of dot class file loading. So the purpose is same, that is to write the logic of the application, but those logics are executed during the dot class file loading when it comes to static block. Now for this, I'm just going to show you some example, static block example. Now, so let's just static block example. Okay, example number 1. Example number 1 is to show that static block is just for your information, we have in instance block we have seen that this instance block is executing multiple times. It depends upon the number of objects being created for a file, whereas execution of the static block is only once, because dot class file loading will take place only once. So therefore, the static block will execute only once in the lifetime for the Java file. Okay. Now, just to show this, let me just write our code here. So let's just remove this. It's not required. Now let's say we have a class. Just you can change this class to test. Let's say we have a class test, and let's try to declare the instance block here. Let's say let's try to print something here. Let's say we have two instance block. Instance block instance block 1, and let's say we have instance block 2, and let's say we have two static block. Let's just copy this. C. So static block syntax, just you have to put static modifier here. Static. Okay. Now let's say we have one constructor here. Let's say we have one parameter constructor. Let's try to print one out constructor. Let's declare another constructor here. Two argumented constructor. Now this is to show this static block execution takes place only once during the .class file loading. So let's check with this example. Okay. Now we have two instance blocks here and two static blocks, and we have two constructors being declared here. Now let's try to call those constructors at the time of object creation. Case t is equal to so we are creating this object at the time of object creation. The constructor and the instance block will be executed. So we have one argument constructor here, so we have to pass the value, and let's try to call this constructor. We have two parameters, train and 20, train and 20. Now this is just to check how many times this static block is getting executed. So let's just try to save this, and let's try to compile this program. Test is equal to new variable t is already defined in the method. Yeah, I made a mistake because we have to give different names for the object. Let's say this is object t1, and let's say we have object t2. Let's just save this. Compile successfully. Let's try to execute this. We have class T. Yes. I made a mistake here. This is not instance. This is static. Static. Let's just static block 1. And this is the static block 2. This is instance block 1, instance block 2, static block 1, static block 2, 0, 1. Okay, everything good. Let's just try to compile it again. Compile successfully. Now let's try to execute. Now, so if you look at this output, we can see that this static block is printed 2 times. I mean, only 1 time. That is just to show this. This example is just to show the execution. The static block execution is only once during the .class file loading. Now, how the program will execute, how the execution of this program happens is that I'm just going to show you here. So at the time of class loading by JVM, that is at the time of .class file loading by the JVM, these 2 static blocks will be executing. It will be executing only once. It will not execute again and again. So at the time of .class file loading, these 2 static blocks will be executed. This is how it is getting executed at the top. And only after that, this instance block at the time of object creation before constructor, this instance block will be executed, and then constructor will be executed as shown here in the output. So first these 2 static block is executed, then instance block, then constructor is getting executed. So we have a second object. So when the second object is being created, those 2 instance block will be executed, and then the 2 argument constructor is being printed. So this is just to show that static block execution takes place only once at the time of .class file loading. So this is the example 1, and we have example 2. Example 2 is Let's just try to modify this code. Let's just try to remove one of the object. Here we have two objects being created. Now let's just try to remove one of the object. Let's say remove one of the object, and let's try to remove this. This is not required. And let's try to see the output. So when you are like practicing, you can always try with the different approaches, like creating one object and multiple object. Just you can check to acquire knowledge. Okay. Now here I'm trying to remove one object, and there is only one object here, and let's see the output. Now here we can see that we have created only, we can see that the static block will be executed only once at the time of dot class file loading, and this instance block will be executed during the object creation. Since we have only one object, this instance block is executed only once, and the constructor execution. So this just to show when the static block is getting executed in the Java file. Okay, this is the example 2. Now let's move on to example 3. Example 3 is so here I have removed one of the object. Remove one object. Now let's try to remove this object as well and see what happens. Here we have the Java file, and let's try to remove this object. Now we don't have an object, we don't require this, and let's see what happens. We have just two instance block and two static block. Now let's try to compile and execute. First we have to save it, and just forgot to save. Compile successfully. Now let's try to execute. We didn't create any object, just we have declared two instance block and two static block, and we have a main method. Let's try to execute. Now we can see here, this is just I'm just showing the example to prove that the static block is executed during the dot class file loading and not during the object creation. Okay, so here just these two static block is being printed. Here we can see that static block is being printed, whereas this two instance block is not being printed because this instance block will be executed only during the object creation, whereas this static block does not depend on the object creation, and it will be executed during the dot class file loading. So this is just to show this. So this is the third example, removing both objects. Now the example 4. The example 4 is without main method. Now let's say we don't, let's say now to show this example, I don't require this instance block because there is no object creation. So this example is what happens if we try to execute the static blocks without the main method, because this main method will be called by the JVM, and the execution of the Java program starts from the main method. Okay, so let's just remove this main method and see whether this static block is being executed. So if we see logically, the dot class file, logically the dot class file loading is happens before calling the main method. So if we see logically, so this static block should be executed without the main method. But just let's just try to confirm whether this static block will be getting executed even if we don't have the main method. So let's just save this. We don't have main method. We just have a two static block here. Okay. So we have compiled successfully. Compilation, it is not giving error. Now it's time of dot class file loading n. Now it's time for dot class file loading n, calling the main method by the JVM. This comment does that job. Java test. Now, so program here we are trying to execute the static block without having the main method. Now, when we are trying to compile, it's not giving any error, but when we try to execute, that is dot class file loading, and when the JVM is trying to call this main method, it is giving error as main method not found in the class test. Please define the main method as public static void main string args. Now, the conclusion from this example is, this just for your information, up to Java version that is 1.5. Now it's Java version 1.8 or 1.11 something. I'm not sure. Now up to Java version 1.5, up to Java version 1.5, so we can execute these static blocks without having the main method. But from Java version, Java version 1.6 and above, it is made that for execution of the static blocks, that main method is mandatory. So this is just for your information. Okay, so this is just for your information. So conclusion from this program. Okay, so since I'm using Java version 1.8, that's why we are giving this error. That is main method not found. So if I happen to use Java version 1.5 and below, then this program should work fine. Okay, so this is just for information. This is the example 4 without main method. Now I think that's all with this instance block purpose purpose and purpose, that is purpose 1 and the purpose 2. Now I'm just going to write one overall program for this class elements using all the class elements, that is variables, methods, constructor, instance block, and static blocks. So that's all with the static block. Now finally we are done with the 5 elements of the constructor, that is variables, methods, constructors, constructor, instance block, and the static block. Sorry, I've just done with this purpose. Now the second purpose I've not done, initialization of the static variable during the dot class file loading. So just I wanted to give some examples for this initialization of the static variables during the dot class file loading. Purpose 2, initialization of static variables during the dot class not object creation. This is the second purpose for the static block. Example 1 for this is with let's try without using the similar to instance. Now let's try to declare one class test. Let's just try just remove this, it's not required. Now let's try to declare one static variable. Let's say we have class emp. Let's give some meaning for this program. Emp employee class, and let's say we have static variable, that is static int eig. Now let's just declare one static method, static void. Let's say we have display method here. Now let's print. Now, when we are assessing this static, always we have to remember, when we hear the word static, always we have to remember class. Okay, always we have to use class dot eid. Okay. Now let's try to call this method here. So this is a static method, and this is the static area. We are trying to assess the static method to static area, so we can with the help of class. Test dot test.tisp. Okay. So let's try to save this. We have a test class, duplicate class emp. So I think we have some made mistake here. So this is not test. We have to use the class name emp. So this is not test. So we have compiled successfully. Now let's try to execute. We have class emp. Now with this, so this program is without using the static block. So the problem with this program without using the static block is the default value is being printed. Now let's try to solve this problem with the help of static block. Now let's try to declare one static block here. So this static block will be executed during the .class file loading. So this is how we declare static block. Okay. Now let's try to initialize this. Question. Seems like let me just finish this up, and let's try to entertain this question. So first I want to wind up this. Let's say we are dealing with this static block. Okay, now let's just try to solve this. We have a program here that is default value is being printed. Now, so default value is not required in the project developments and all, so we have to give the meaning to the program. So therefore, how to solve this is let's try to declare, let's try to initialize this static variable. EID is equal to, let's say 1 let's type 2. Let's just save this and let's just try to, always we have to compile. We have EMP class. Now this is how we are using the static block for initialization purpose. Okay, the purpose number 2 for the static block. I hope you have understood this example. This is without using the static block. Now I think that's all with this instance block and the static block. So before moving on with the example on using all the class elements, so I just wanted to write one program using all these class elements, that is variables, method, constructor, instance block, and a static block. Now, before moving on with this, I just wanted to, because there is one question being asked, not question, but so I'm asked to ask questions to the viewers. So if you have any questions, you can just ask or comment on the YouTube. So I have my friend here to answer. Now let me just finish up with this. Finish up with this instance block and static. I mean, just finish up with this instance. I'm just going to write one program use those 5 class elements. Using all class elements. So we have a class state. So let's say, so this is class elements. So this is a program using all the class elements. So let's say we have class test. So let's try to declare 2 instance variables. So we have first class element variables. Let's try to declare 2 instance variables. Let's say int a equal to, let's say we have 10. Let's try to declare one instance variable, then static variable. Static int b equal to 20. Static variable. So this is how we declare the instance variable in the static variable. Now the second element is method. Let's try to declare one instance method. Let's say we have void m1. Okay. Void m1, and let's just try to pass one argument here. Let's print something here. Now let's try to declare another method, that is static method. Static void. Let's pass static void m2. string argument str, and let's say this is the method. This is instance, no, this is static method. Now these are the second element, that is method. So this is the first element, that is variables. Now we have third element, that is constructor. Let's try to declare one constructor. We have class case, so constructor name and class name must be same. This is, we have learned the rules for declaring the constructor. So let's try to say this is a default constructor, and let's try not default constructor. This is a constructor. I mean, so constructors are used to write the logics. So let's just try to print something here. This is the zero argumented constructor. Okay. Now let's see, we have another constructor. This is constructor, one argumented constructor. It's just example. Okay. So this is the one argumented constructor. Now this is the third element. Constructor is the third element of the class. Now we have fourth element, that is static block. Let's just declare it. This is how we declare the instance block. Instance block, and let's just try to print something. Let's just copy. This is the instance block, and the fifth element we have static block. We have to give the static modifier for the static. Static. This is the static block. Now we have done declaring all the 5 class elements. So we have variables. We have 2 variables, that is instance variable and static variable. We have 2 methods, void m1 and void m2. We have 2 constructors, 0 constructor and 1 parameterized constructor, 1 up constructor, and we have 1 instance block and 1 static block. Now all the 5 elements are present in this class. Now let's try to call our method m1 and m2. Now first let's try to call this method m1. So this method m1 is a static method, so always we have to assist with the help of class name. Okay, we have class test. Let's give a class t1 is equal to new. This is the named object. Now at the time of this object creation, let's try to call this constructor. This 0 argument constructor will be called, and now let's try to call this method m1. So how we are calling method m1? With the help of object reference. We have object t1, so let's just call m1. This is how we call m1, and if we see here, void m1 has 1 parameter. So always at the time of calling the method, we have to pass the value to the method. So this is how we are declaring the parameter, and at the time of method calling, we have to pass the value. So let's try to pass the value as 10. So this is just a simple program. Now this is how we are calling the method m1. So at the time of this object creation, this 0 argument constructor will be executed, and then with the help of this object reference, this m1 method will be called, and what is inside this will be executed. This statement will be executed. Now we have a method m2, that is static void m2, and we have a parameter. Now let's try to call this method. So this is a static method. Now this is a static method, and public void static, this is a static area. Now when you are trying to access the static to the static area, we have to always do it or access with the help of class name. So just uh, before calling this class, let's just try to execute this constructor. We have one argument in constructor. Let's just try to create one object. Is T2. So we have a constructor is one parameterized constructor. So at the time of constructor calling, we have to pass the value for this constructor. So this is how we are passing. All those things I have covered in the previous lessons. So let's just try to pass one parameter, that is integer value. Let's see where I'm passing 30, not 30, 20, let's see, 20. Now calling method M1 and M2, it will work if we use the reference variable, either of these reference variable, that is T1 and T2. So for this, we are using the T1 object reference variable. Okay. Now let's try to call this method M2. It is static void M2. Now static method, when we are trying to access to the static area, always you have to do it with the help of class name. Okay. That is, we have class Js and we have method M2. And M2 method has one argument, that is string str. Now we have to pass a string value here. Let's just pass one string. Let's say, let's give trashy here. Now I think that's all with the object creation and calling of the method. Now I will just tell you the flow execution of this, how it is executing after the compilation. Okay. Now let's I think we have done with this program, that is using all the class elements, using class elements here, and then we are creating the object and we are calling the method M1 and M2. So let's try to compile and execute this program. I have a class test.java, and I have class test. So it's compiled successfully. I think there is no error. Now let's try to execute. Always JVM is responsible for execution.class file loading, and after that main method will be called by JVM. Java test. I think we have a class test here. Yeah, class test. So that's all with the overall example program using all the 5 class elements. Now the program flow execution, just I wanted to show it here. So as soon as this JVM loads the .class file into the memory, the JVM will call this main method, public static void main. The program execution starts from the main method. Now first, this object will be created. I mean here, sorry, I just made mistake. So here we have one static block. Now JVM has 2 responsibilities. That is class file loading to the memory and then calling the main method. Now at the time of .class file loading, this part, static block, will be executed. I've just made mistake here. This is static block. So this will be getting executed at the time of .class file loading. After that, the JVM will. So here, let's just try to execute again. Instance block, instance block, instance block. Instance possibility. Now it's getting here. So I mean to say that at the time of class loading, this will be executed first. Here we can see that static block is executed first. This block will be executed. Then only main method will be called by JVM. And at the time of this object creation, before this constructor being executed, before this constructor, the instance block. Here we have instance block. So this will be executed as shown here. Instance block. Only after that instance block, then this constructor, this is zero algorithm constructor, and this will be executed. Then after that, the flow goes to the second object. So when we create this object, so this again this instance block will be executed, because execution of the instance block depends upon the object creation. Okay, so this instance block will be executed, and then it will execute this one argumented constructor, and then method M1 will be called, then method M2 will be called. So this is how the flow of execution takes place for this program. So I think that's all with this program using all the 5 elements. If you have any questions, you can just ask me or comment on the YouTube. So I think that's all with the instance block, the static block for today. And my friend Ogunchile will continue with the operators. So I think we are done with the 5 elements that is in the class.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ogunchile, and I will take you through some of the basic operators in Java. So before I go into like basic operators in Java, so I think by now everyone of you might know how to program in Java. Actually, the basic structure of how to program in Java, including like 5 class elements, how to declare a class, then methods, constructor, instance block, and a static block. So for example, if you have a problem, right, suppose you have a problem statement. So in order to solve that problem statement, basically without any like writing a logics, you cannot solve that problem. So basically the logics will be written inside the the static block, constructor, methods. So I will take you through some of the basic operators in Java. So when you see that basic operators, when you like first see the word operators, I know everyone must be familiar with the term operators. Usually come across mathematics, right? So uh, okay, so when we are performing certain the operations in a variable to a variable or operand, you use operators. So in Java, there are many types of operators. So first is assignment operators, unary operator, arithmetic operator, logical operator, Ternary operator, relational operator. Okay, so first one is assignment operator. Usually when you see an assignment operator, we come across assignment operator everywhere. Basically, the assignment operator is denoted by a symbol equals to sign, equals to, right? So even during the like object creation, or when you instantiate an object, you use this assignment operator. Here is an example of how to use an assignment operator. For example, you have initialized an integer integer a with the value 5. So before, like when you declare a variable a, for example integer a, so Java compiler will assign you a garbage value to a variable a when we don't assign any value to a variable. So if you garbage, about the garbage collection we will talk in a later classes. So right now we will focus on an operator. So when we declare a variable a, so Java compiler will assign a garbage value to a variable a. So when you using an assignment operator, when we assign a value to a variable a, then this garbage value is been overridden, like, by a value 5. So this is a simple assignment operator. So next is a unary operator. So when we hear the term unary, in a literal terms, it means a single, right? So when we try to perform an operation on a single operand, then it's called a unary operation. So under unary operation, there are basically a plus operator. Plus operator indicates a positive value. When you have a single operand with a plus operator, that means a value is a positive. And similarly, when you have a single operand with the operator negative, that means a value is a negative. So when you have a plus plus, uh, it's an increment operator. That means operand gets incremented by a value 1. We will I will try to get in depth in a practical. So just try to understand what this plus plus, minus minus, and this logical complement operator means. So plus plus means you increment an operand by a value 1. Minus minus means you decrement a value by a 1. So when you see this exclamation mark, like in normal terms, exclamation mark, that means it usually inverse a boolean. For example, if you have a true condition, if you put this exclamation mark before, then it inverse that boolean value, and boolean value, which will result in a false. So regarding this increment operator, there are different types of increment operators. First one is post increment, which means you have a variable or operand a, and like falling plus plus increment operator. Then we have pre increment plus plus a. Then next one, we have post decrement a minus minus, which decrements a value of a by 1. Then we have a pre decrement, which means minus minus a. So if I take you through some of the practical examples, sorry. So I have already declared a class named test, and here is a man method. So for example, I am initializing a variable e with a value of 10. Okay. So I'm trying to like print the value a system. Okay, so firstly I will print a value a. Okay. Now if I use a concept of unary operator, first I will use post increment. Okay. I will copy this one. If I try to print this way, guys, can you guess what will be the output of this line? Because I'm using a post increment a plus plus. Can you guys just randomly, or can guess the output of this line? Okay, if I try to run this code, for me, I think I will get an output of first line. It will print a value of a, that is 10. The second one, many of you might think that it will print a value 10, but I think it's wrong, because this post increment will take place after only this line of code gets printed. For example, if I just try to run this code, see, 10 10. First, here the value of a will remain 10 only, then the value of 10 A10 will be printed. Then only the value of A gets incremented by how much? 1, right? So if I try to print A again after this line, then guess the output, guys. Now the value of E will be 11. See, 10, 10, and 11. So this is how the post increment in a unary operator happens. So if I try with the same thing with the pre-increment using plus plus, now guys, guess the output. So it's just the opposite. So we will print a value in the first line, will with the value E with the value 10. Then here, before printing, the value A will get incremented by 1. So here the value will be 11. So see, now this is the effect of pre-increment. Okay. Now if I this will happen the same way in a pre-decrement and a post-decrement. So if I would recommend you guys to carry on with your with your own regarding the pre-decrement and post-decrement. So now if I try to take you through another example. So int j equals to a plus plus. Now here I have initialized a variable e with a value 10. Now next I'm also declaring a variable j, but I am using an assignment operator here equals to symbol. I am assigning the value j with a plus plus using a post increment unary operator. So the flow of execution here is now before a gets incremented, before a gets incremented by value 1, the original value of a, that is 10, will be assigned to the value j. So that means now the value of j will be 10. Okay, the value of j will be 10. So if I try to print this one, a okay plus j, if I try to print the value of a in j, now see the value of a is 11. Why 11? Why 11? Because the original value of a is 10, but later we are incrementing the value of a by 1. So the value of a gets updated by 1. That means 11. But the value of j remains 10 because because the original value of a is assigned to the variable j. This is how the logics happens here. So if I try to use a pre-increment operator, okay, sorry. Hello? Okay. So if I use this pre-increment operator plus plus a, now guess the output, guys. So the logics here is the original value of e is 10. Now, because of this pre-increment effect, the value of e gets incremented to 11, then it gets the value of j will be 11 here. So if I try to print, say the value of e in j will be 11 and 11. Okay, so this is how the increment, pre-increment and post increment happens here. Okay, so under unary operator, remember plus is for a positive value. In unary operator, you will have only one operand. Okay, so if you have plus before that operand, that means a value is a positive. If you have minus, then the value is a negative. Then if you have plus plus, that means either pre-increment or post-increment by a value 1. So minus minus a decrement operator, and we have, if I have a operand with a decrement operator, then it decrements a value by 1. So if you have a, I mean, that exclamation mark normally we call it, and in here we call it a logical complement operator, and it inverts the value of boolean. So if I try to do it in practical of this logical complement operator, so we have a boolean value of a equals to true. Okay, if we try to use this complement operator, exclamation e, exclamation e. So initial original, the, I mean, the boolean value of e is true. When we complement that value e, then the output will be false. See, this is how it complements the boolean value. Okay, so next one is arithmetic operator. So basically the arithmetic operators are used in mathematical expressions. So following are the arithmetic operators. You have a plus, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and a remainder operator. Addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and a remainder operator. And remember that this addition operator is also used for a string concatenation. That means when you try to concatenate two string, then you use this plus operator. So basically these things are self-explanatory, but I will try to do it in practical of this remainder operator. We call it a modulus. We have an integer value of a equals to 10. Okay, so okay, basically I will try to check whether this integer value a is a even or odd. So if I'm trying to check whether this value a is a even or odd. If a modulus if a modulus 2 equals to 0, if the remainder is 0 when that number is divided by 2, that means that number is a even number. So even, else. And about these conditional operators, I have already talked on that. So it's so system else is a odd. Even. See, the modulus will check the remainder remainder, I mean called remainder modulus. Okay, this percentage symbol is a modulus, means a remainder. For example, when a is divided by 2, if the remainder is equals to 0, if the remainder is equals to 0, that means it's a even. It's a, when the number is divisible by 2, that is a even number, or else it is a odd. So basically this is used to I mean the modulus operator, or we call, is used to check the remainder of an operation. Okay. Okay, so plus addition, minus means subtraction. This is multiplication, division, and a remainder operator. I think you guys can explore on this, because these are not that difficult. Now relational operators. Okay, so basically the relational operators are used when you try to compare two conditions, like when you have a two numbers, right? So I will like take you through one by one in a practical. So the relation operators are double equals to, then not equals to, that is represented by exclamation and equals to, then greater than or equals to, then less than and equals to. So these are the relational operators. So if I like try in a practical, okay, so int value 1 equals to 10, int value 2 equals to, okay, so I'm here, I'm again using if statement. If value 1 equals to value 2, so I'm just checking the two numbers, right? Value 1 and value 2, that means these are equal. Okay, so again I'm going to make use of all the relational operators. So here not equals to, okay, okay. Is equal, 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 that is not equal, equal, then less than, value 1 is value 1 is less than or equal value 1 is greater. Okay, so here the assignment operator, I mean relational operator will try to check two condition and gives you a boolean result. For example, if value 1 is, so okay, I have initialized value 1 with value 1 with value 10, value 2 with value 2. Then I'm checking if value 1 is equals to value 2. Then if this condition returns a boolean expression of true, then this the block inside this if statement will be executed. So if the value a equal 1 is equals to value 2, since the value 1 and value 2 is not equal, then this condition will return a Boolean expression of false, right? Then next, if value 1 is not equals to value 2, so it's not equal, so this returns a true Boolean expression, then this block of code will be executed. So then it will print not equal, okay, not equal. Then it will again check whether value 1 is less than or equals to value 2. So since value 1 is less than value 2, then it will also print this line of code. Now the value 1 is not greater, so it will not print this one. So if I try to see, it prints this two lines, this one and this one. Okay, so this is how where you use a relational operator. Okay, so next one is logical operator. Logical operator. Logical operator sometimes called a Boolean operator, as it returns a Boolean result. So remember this point. And logical operator will always return a Boolean result. Remember that one. Logical operator will always return a Boolean result. Then next one is logical operators are used to perform logical and, or, and not operations. And it is similar to AND gate and OR gate in a digital electronics. So if you have a background in a digital electronics, this implementing this logical operator is pretty easy. So even if you are not from a digital like electronics background, like you don't have to worry. This is simple. For example, if I take an example with the digital electronics, for N gate, you have two inputs, right? E and B, and you are put through an AND gate. So here is the AND gate table. So we are giving an input E with a value 0 and B with a value 0, and we are putting it through an AND gate, and the result will be 0. Okay, so this is how the like AND gate happens. The logic of AND gate happens in the digital electronics. So only the result will be true when the value of A and value of B is true. Okay, there is only one situation where the result of AND gate will be true. That is when the input value A is true and the input value B is true. Otherwise, when input value A is 1, B equals to 0, then the result will be false. That means 0. Okay, so this is how logic logic AND gate happens in the digital electronics. Similarly, in OR gate, you have you have two inputs and put through a OR gate. Okay, so this is the table, okay, OR gate table. So we are giving an input, like for example, if you are giving an input A equals to 0, B equals to 0, remember that 0 is referring to false, 1 equals to true. Okay, so 0, when we give input A equals 0, B equals 0, and put it through OR gate, the result is 0. Okay, but when we have an input, whether the input A equals to 1 or B equals to 1, then the output will be 1. So only the output will be false when both the input A and B is 0. Okay, so I hope I'm not confusing you guys. Okay, so NOT gate. Okay, about NOT gate, so it's usually called a unary, or unary, because we have only one input and we are trying to invert that input. For example, if that input is true, then we are inverting that true Boolean expression to a false. Okay, so forget about that digital electronics. Now if we come into this, the Java program, so the syntax of this logical AND operator is we use that ampersand. Okay, 2 ampersand. So we have condition 1 joined by ampersand to ampersand and condition 2. And for OR operator, we have a condition, then we have that straight lines, 2 straight lines, and a condition 2. So in NOT gate, we have this exclamation mark. We usually call that exclamation mark inverter. Okay, so if we try to like do it in a practical, okay, okay, I want to declare in the variable. Interval 3 interval 4, and I'm giving it 30 and 40. So again, I'm going to use an if statement. If let's keep A, B, C, and D. Okay, so if I'm using if A is greater than B, and I'm using AND operator, and I have another condition, then C is greater than D. Okay. So what this condition will do is, first we are checking whether the A is greater than B. So since the A is not greater than B, then this condition fails, right? So in AND operator, if the first condition fails, then it will neglect this second condition. Remember that. The Java compiler will neglect this second condition if the first condition is false. Okay, so if in case if A is less than B, okay, so if A is less than B, yes, it is true, right? 10 is less than B. Now it's true, it returns a Boolean expression of 2. So then the AND operator will say, okay, so check next condition. So it will check this one, whether C is greater than D. Since C is not greater than D, then again this condition fails. So if any one of this condition fails, then the AND operator will say that this condition is false. So that inside the if statement will not be executed. This logic will not be executed. Okay. So this is how the AND operator works. Okay. So if I try to go through again, so we are checking whether A is less than B. So here the condition is true. So then the AND operator will say check another condition. Okay, so I'm checking another condition. So C is greater than D is false. So now the AND operator fails. So when either one of this operator fails, then this AND operator will return a Boolean expression of false. Then the logic inside this if statement will not be executed. So if I try to say that if C is less than D, yes, C is less than D. Now it is true, right? Now this the logical or AND operator will return a Boolean expression of true. So that means the logic inside this if statement will be executed. So this is how the logic AND operator works here. So similarly, okay, if I will try to, okay, so next one is AND operator. Is it AND operator? Okay, I'm using OR operator. OR operator. So the OR operator will work this way now. So now first condition will be checked here. A is less than B. A is less than B. Say true, right? True. Okay, so then OR condition will check another. C is less than D, right? So what an operator does is like similar in, I mean, or operator similar in digital electronics. When if the like input A and B is 1 1, that means the output will be 1. Only the output will be false is when the input, both the inputs are false, that means 0. Okay, so here the both the like first input is less than 20 is true, so then C is less than D, right? Correct. So it returns 1 1, which means the logics inside this if statement will be executed. So if, like, for example, if both the condition are false, for example, if A is greater than B, C is greater than B, then the logic, I mean, the logic or operator will return a Boolean false expression. So then the logics inside the if statement will not be executed. Okay, so this is how the logical operator works. Sorry. So this, I mean, this logical complement operator works similar with the thing that I have told in last, like if you have a condition true here, then it will invert the Boolean expression true into a false. Okay, you can explore on this one. This is not that difficult. So the next one is the last operator that I'll be talking is about the ternary operator. Okay, so ternary operator, I find it very interesting. So it is a simplified, it usually functions like a if statement, and it's usually a simplified if statement. Okay, so if statement will take multiple like lines of code to write that logics, but in case of ternary operator, you can write it in a single line of code. So the syntax of this ternary operator is here. You have this three expression. Basically, this a ternary operator will have this three expression. Expression 1 followed by this question mark, expression 2 colon, and expression 3. So the flow of execution is here. The variable, you have initialized a variable, for example, int a. Okay, variable int a expression. So you are checking whether okay, better I do it in a practical. Okay, okay, I'm int answer. Okay, ternary operator, I'm checking whether expression 1 a is greater than b. Okay, so if a is greater than b, then execute this. Okay, so it will print this one. Okay, okay. Let me keep this one as a string. That string a is greater. So the ternary operator, okay, so the syntax of a ternary operator is you have a condition here, expression 1. This is a expression 1. You have a condition. Usually the expression 1 will have a condition. Remember that. Expression 1 will have a condition. Okay, so here the condition says if A is greater than B, then if it is true, then execute this one, this expression 2. Remember that. If this condition is true, then execute this expression 1. Okay, so if this condition is false, then execute this expression 3. Okay, again, if I repeat, so expression 1 will have a condition. Basically, it will have a condition, and it will return either Boolean expression true or false. So if the condition is true, remember that it will execute this first, I mean the second expression. Okay, then if this condition is false, then it will I mean, execute this third expression. Okay. Okay. If I repeat for the last time, so if you will have expression one as a condition. Okay. This condition will be checked. Then if this condition is true, then this expression will be executed, or else if this condition is false, then it will execute this one. So now if I try to print this answer, okay, if I try to print this answer, guess the answer, guys. So basically is okay, I will print it. Okay, so B is greater. Why B is greater? Why it is printing B is greater? Because this condition is false. Okay, since A is 10, B is 20. So A is 10 is never greater than 20. So it is false, right? This condition will return a Boolean expression of false. So then if it is a false Boolean expression, then this second, I mean the last third expression will be executed. Okay, so if I try to change this one, since now this condition will return a Boolean expression true, that means this first expression will be executed. See, A is greater. Okay, so again, the interesting thing is you can have multiple condition here. Okay, you can use logical AND operator here again. Okay, inside this one you can use logical operator. You can have multiple conditions here, but it has to return only one Boolean expression as a result. Okay, A is greater than D, something like this. Okay, you can have this uh I mean the logical AND operator, you can have logical OR operator. Okay, okay, so let's try to see this condition. A is less than B. Okay, true. And logical and has a logical AND operator. If first condition is true, then it will check the next one. Okay, but if first condition is false in logical AND operator, then it will ignore the second condition. Okay, then it will return a false. So since this first condition is true, then the logical AND operator will say check the next condition. So A is greater than D, that means 40. This is false. That means the logical AND operator will return false, right? Because this is true, but this one is false. For logical AND operator to have a true written Boolean expression, both the condition has to be true. Okay, when even if the one of this condition is true, it will return a false expression. So since it returns a false, then this B will is greater will be printed. Okay. Okay, see, and you can have this OR operator as well. So if the OR operator says that either one of this condition is true, then it will return a true Boolean expression. Okay, so since this A is less than B true, that means this A is greater will be printed. Okay, see here. I hope you guys understood this, ternary operator in combination with this logical AND and OR operator. Okay, so the next one, I think this is the thing. Okay, I think this is the end of this the lesson on operators. I hope you guys have understood the concept of this following operators. Assignment operators basically used for the assignment of a variable declared. Okay, used represented by a symbol equals to sign. Then you have a unary operator. Under unary operator, you have this one. Okay, the most important thing is post increment, pre increment, post decrement, pre decrement. Okay, then the automatic operators, plus, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, remainder. Remainder is also known as modulus operator. Then we have a relational operator, equals to, not equals to, greater than, or equals to, less than, or less than or equals to. Okay, the next one we have is logical operator. Under logical operator you have and, or, and not. Okay, so okay, so then the under Ternary operator, this is the syntax of a Ternary operator. We have a variable. Okay, so expression one, usually this expression one will be a condition, and it has to written in a Boolean expression, either true or false. If it is true, the condition is true. If the condition is true, then it will execute this expression two. Then if this condition is false, then it will execute this expression three. Okay, and I find this ternary operator very useful, and it saves your lines of code. Okay, guys, thank you so much. And if you have any questions, please comments please comment in YouTube. So Karmanso,
Yes, love.
question, if you have any question, like
There was one question regarding, are there any library file which supports other print options
YouTube, in YouTube.
in YouTube comment?
Okay, let me check this one. Okay, YouTube comment boşta. Okay. Why is it? I didn't find these questions.
We can in the site top chart.
Okay. Sorry. Yes. Okay. Present. Are there any library file to support other print options? Yes, I think there are libraries you can import those libraries and use. Okay, so for example, I'm not really sure. I mean, the name of the libraries. I think Jogger or Logger something. There is a library you can import that library and use to print that. Using instead of system.out.print, you can use the Logger library. Okay, so for example, like if you want to get a user input, you can use either scanner, right? And you can use either use a buffer method, so buffer reader. So similar to this one, you have like a logger or something, right? Logger library to print a value. Okay.
I think that's all. Uh,
Okay, that's all, Yolan. Okay, then thank you.
Maybe we can stop here.
Okay, thank you. See you next time.
See you next time.